I'm in the phone booth, it's the one from the hall. If you don't answer, I just ring it off the wall. I know he said that it's had a call. So leave me hanging on the telephone. So leave me hanging on the telephone.
What's up there, fruitcakes? Hop on your tandem bicycle, start doing the hucklebuck and firing hot clam chowder all over the place, because it's time for episode 2 of Good with the Telephones, a Jerky Boys podcast. I'm Christian Larson, and joining me once again is my co-host, Dan Salerno. Dan, thank you for joining me.
Hello there.
This week, like every week, we'll be talking about 2 iconic Jerky Boys phone calls, and this week we're talking about Kamal Ahmed, the other half of the Jerky Boys. There's not a lot of official information about the history of the Jerky Boys or their relationship, but by all accounts, they were childhood friends who were making prank phone calls as early as the late 70s. And they made it big in the early 90s. And by the mid 90s, they had pretty much stopped talking and eventually went their separate ways. There's a lot of theories about their breakup, but I feel like the real answer is kind of complicated, probably. It's sort of like the Beatles. There were people who were like, well, it was Yoko. Well, it was Paul being a tyrant. Well, it was George being unsatisfied. It was a combination of a million things, and it was about growing apart and creative growth and all that.
Yeah, and you know, Kamal is like, he went on to do sort of kind of legitimate artistic projects and film and such stuff like that. And, you know, Johnny was content to just be the Jerky Boys guy for another decade or whatever, or till his day, really. I can understand getting tired of it, not wanting it to be the single thing that defined you, but I could also understand just riding it for as long as possible.
Yeah.
I follow Kamal on Twitter to this day. He's an interesting guy. He's still involved in film and stuff like that. And, you know, he takes that, you know, the artistic part of his life seriously, you know, and like you, I have no idea what the behind the scenes beef might have been. Whenever they talk about it, Johnny's always very diplomatic about it, as far as I've heard.
Kamal's Twitter is actually really worth following. One of the things I love is that he shares a lot of memories and photography of New York City in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
Which is very cool because as a kid growing up in northern New Jersey in the 80s, New York was this exotic place. It was the kind of thing you only saw in movies. And it was right over the bridge. Maybe your parents brought you to the Christmas Spectacular.
The Dinosaur Museum.
Yeah, or a Broadway show or something like that. But it would be in and out, and they would tell you not to make eye contact with anyone on the sidewalk. Kamal is definitely an aficionado of dirty old New York. And again, a very interesting guy. My theory as to what happened, they're childhood friends who became huge, like out of nowhere. And that in itself is going to cause tension. But like you said, Johnny was all in on the Jerky Boys, and Kamal was like, maybe this isn't what I was meant to do. So
right. Hey, God bless us all, huh?
Say a prayer for the future. But it's funny because the Jerky Boys blew up after the first album. And there was a huge media saturation, if you will, just prior to their second album. They were doing Bud Light commercials. They were doing interviews with news outlets. The movie was just a year or two later. There was just this lightning in a bottle moment for them right after the first album. And when you watch the interviews, they're both kind of awkward. They're not used to talking to the press and whatnot.
Stardom didn't necessarily fit naturally on them in any sense.
Yeah. I mean, they came from a blue-collar background in New York, both of them. Johnny worked construction. Kamal was apparently a bouncer. in New York City, which makes sense. In the early 2000s, I lived in the West Village in New York, and I lived on a street which was known as Little India because pretty much every storefront on that block was an Indian restaurant. We were never quite sure how they all stayed in business because they were all right next to each other, but we theorized that they were all owned by the same person and they shared a giant kitchen. I don't know. But the guy who was the godfather of Little India was Kamal's dad.
Ah,
That's a little bit of
I did not.
interesting trivia.
He's a second generation, or what
Yeah.
is, I always forget how that works. Second generation is the generation born in the United States, right? I don't know. Like one of the things we'll probably have to address this. The ethnic aspects of the humor of a lot of Kamal's calls, doing the Indian voice, doing the Arab voice.
Of course.
These are things that are not necessarily smiled upon today.
Yeah, and a big reason that gets brought up that Kamal was kind of sick of the Jerky Boys is that he did not want to perpetuate those stereotypes.
Yeah.
And the early 90s were sort of the last time where you could get away with that sort of thing.
Right. You had Apu on The Simpsons, who doesn't get canceled until the 2010s or something, right?
Yeah.
There's this sense still that it was still something that was okay to do, right? To do these funny Indian accents. And also the fact that, Kamal himself comes from that ethnicity, I guess makes it more palatable to an extent. But it is still something that, today would be definitely harder to get away with, I suppose.
Absolutely. But
I don't want to say anything that's going to get me in trouble.
I don't think enough people listen to this for us to be
Right.
remotely in danger of being canceled. But no, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I will say this as kind of a little caveat. Like I was saying about Saul Rosenberg, the joke is really not so much that he is being a ridiculous stereotype.
Right.
The joke is that he does bizarre things. The Tarbash character gets himself in situations that are insane and have nothing to do with his ethnicity.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
just
I don't know. I have to I'm going to push back on that just a little bit and
Okay.
say, I work as street performer with Cobra.
Okay. The Cobra, sure. Okay, I'll give you that. All right.
We'll get to that call another time.
Let's not get hung up on calls we're not discussing because we haven't even gotten to the ones that we are.
Yes.
We're already laughing our asses off, which is a bad sign. Anyway,
all right, get your magician.
Both of us picked Kamal calls from the first album, which makes sense because we're starting at the beginning. But these are really two of the most iconic.
And we've talked about this before, and I mentioned it last episode, with people ask, who's your favorite Jerky Boy? Most people probably would be more familiar with Johnny's characters, I guess, maybe to an extent.
Well,
but when
course,
I think about Frank Rizzo, Saul Rosenberg, but when Jack Torse,
that's a whole nother issue we're gonna have to reckon with. But go on.
A whole nother cancellation looming. When I think about the calls that just kill me, his best calls might be the funniest of all. And that's maybe a controversial statement. I don't know. They're very different. Maybe we could start with the fact that the Jerky Boys wouldn't be as good if they were doing the same shtick, right? The fact that Johnny's calls and Kamal's calls are fundamentally different is part of what makes them such a good team.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Kamal's tend to go more into the bizarre, almost to the surreal level of the surreal when something like Uncle Freddy's.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we go any further, let's give a listen to The Egyptian Magician, which is our first call that we'll be discussing.
Oh, Maron.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So the staff at this nightclb, I guess.
I really wonder what kind of place it is, but yeah, some kind of comedy club. They're doing an open mic night. I don't know. But then you mentioned faculty staff or something. I don't know.
I'm assuming it's like a vaudeville type thing. We
A
will never
variety
know. Yeah.
We have this sort of legendary character who's a real person, but who has kind of become a legendary Jerky Boys character of Carol the Night Manager. Before we even
Yes.
get to Carol the Night, actually, we have the assistant first, who
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
also charmed by the younger employee or whatever who's just answering the
Yes.
phone because she's so excited when she
Oh my
hears.
God.
Yes, hello.
Hello?
I called you before. My name is the Egyptian magician.
The Egyptian magician?
It's funny whenever Kamal says the Egyptian magician because those words together are just funny. But the way that this assistant exclaims it when he introduces himself is
Yeah.
both hilarious and charming as well, you
Yeah.
know, like
He really wants to see this act.
yes, whoever
He
this assistant is just the most enthusiastic employee you could hope for.
Right.
Now, that is someone I would love to have as a guest on the podcast.
You would have to get by finding out what the club was. Man, almost 40 years ago now. Well, 35.
I know.
But I don't like to think about that.
No. Anyway, before we start contemplating our own mortality,
Yeah.
let's move on to Carol, the night manager, who
Well,
handles.
Wait. I have one thing to say, and I want to point this out now because it's going to come up in later Kamal calls if this podcast keeps going. Says the Egyptian magician in that enthusiastic tone, and he says, "Right, I called. They told me to call back in 10 minutes."
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I already
Right.
knew what you were going to talk about.
I called. They told me to call back in 10 minutes.
Even if you look at the transcript, it's like he starts to say 1 minute and then stop. But this is actually like a weird kind of verbal
Yes.
tick that this character does in other calls, where he specifies that he has one of something or that there's one of something. So it's not just 10 minutes; it's 1 to 10 minutes.
Yes.
I don't know why I find that hilarious, but I do.
You know what? I almost wrote that down as one of my notes, but I thought that was too obscure and that maybe I was making it up. But
no, only true
It's true.
sickos would be
yeah,
observe that.
it's true. It comes up a lot. Like there will be a noun in a sentence and he will say one before it.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's hilarious.
Right. So Carol.
The call is transferred to Carol, the night manager, who is apparently in charge of booking the audition for this show. And Tarbash proceeds to list all of the magic acts that he is planning on performing. And I put magic in quotes because very few of these things involve illusion or even skill, really.
Right.
They're just bizarre. I'm going to read off the list
Yes.
of acts that Tarbash is going to perform. First, he's going to eat hot coals. Then he's going to stab customers in the eye with a saber.
I love the touch of saber because
Yes,
it makes me think of Sinbad or whatever.
Yes. Again, the specificity.
Not the comedian, the mythical character.
Then he's going to sick his cat on the performer. So performers.
And they maul them on
stage. Well,
he specifies my performers. So he's planning to bring like assistants with him.
Okay. I thought it was his cat was going to maul all the other participants in the show.
The guy playing the accordion.
Yeah, like a ventriloquist.
It might be even funnier though that he has assistants that he hires just to be mauled by a mountain cat. Are we up to the one of the funnier exchanges in this show?
Well, we're probably getting there. He's going to light people on fire, but he clarifies that it is fake.
Right, that's good.
And Carol is okay with that.
And then I light people on fire, but it is, fake, and
It's fake.
Right.
Actually, her responses are really funny. When he says that he's going to eat a hot coal, she says, "That's great."
What I do, I eat hot coal.
That's great.
She has some of the same enthusiasm as the person who answered the
Yes.
call, but
A bit
she's
more
clearly, yeah, she's very corporate about the whole thing. So where were we? He's gonna
Yes.
light people on fire, but it is
But it's
fake.
fake.
Yeah. And then of course he's going to punch his chest and then it disappears in the crowd.
Now
Um,
this is actually we both have listened to this call hundreds of times for the
Of
past
course.
30 years, right?
of course.
And she says, "I'm gonna you punch your chest and it disappears to the crowd." But I don't think that's what he says. I have always heard, "I will punch my chest and it disappears in a cloud." Do you hear that? You don't hear that?
I've never heard that in
Like
all
a
of
magical mist will come and obscure.
I mean, I suppose that's a little less bizarre than the interpretation. Because
Well, what does that even mean? Disappear
as
in the
well, I always thought that he would punch himself in the chest, and then his chest, like his torso, would manifest itself in the middle of the crowd. And
Well, that would be the greatest magic trick of all time.
he'd be up there with a disembodied head and arms
Right.
while his torso was in the crowd. I mean, that was the only thing that it could have meant.
Sometimes
Yeah.
in these calls there are mishearings or whatever that lead to funnier outcomes. And I don't know. You can play the snippet for the people and let them decide. But I've always heard disappear in a cloud, and then Carol repeats it as disappear to the crowd, and he just goes with it.
I punch my chest and then it disappeared to the crowd.
You punch your chest and it disappears in the crowd.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, either way, it's very bizarre and clearly a brilliant improvisation on Kamal's part. So after that, he goes back to mentioning that he plans on terrorizing people with a mountain cat. And this is where Carol repeats the last few words, and it's hilarious.
You terrorize people with a mountain cat. Okay, well, I don't know if you better not bring the mountain cat in for the first time.
For the
For the-
first time.
For the first time.
Not until we know you a little better. Then maybe you
Yeah.
can bring the mountain cat in to terrorize people.
And then of course is the controversial line that he's planning on choking some of the faculty staff, but I always heard it as spaculty staff. Now, my theory was always that there was a edit here. Maybe he mentioned the name of the club. I don't know.
Right.
I know you think he says faculty, which
I just can't
opens
think
up
of what else it could be.
well, I know. Honestly, I think it's an edit because it sounds too much like spaculty. We'll play the bit again for the people to decide.
Maybe just for extra bonus, I choke some of you faculty staff.
Yeah, you choke the staff. Yeah, okay. Whatever.
Who knew that the Egyptian magician would be so controversial?
The official transcript on the Jerky Boys site disagrees with me about cloud and disagrees with you about faculty. But I don't know, it has crowd and it has faculty, but I don't know how much stock to put in these official transcripts. But
Oh yeah. I remember looking up Weezer lyrics on the internet in like 1997, and you couldn't trust that shit at all.
no.
But so who knows? Part of the mystery, part of the fun. As Carol is clearly kind of done with this conversation,
Right.
Tarbash has one last idea. He's going to come out with a whip. And again, coming out with a whip, attacking people with a mountain cat, stabbing people with a saber, choking the staff. This is not magic.
Well, one of the funnier exchanges
Yes,
of the call
yes. Go ahead.
shows us in his country. Now, this is funny. He says, in my country, that is considered. And she steps on him a little bit and comes in and she's like, yeah, that's considered magic. what he is actually going to say is, in my country, that is considered, that is considered entertainment.
Yes.
Even in his bizarro version of Egypt or whatever, it's not magic. It's just something entertaining to see people terrorized with a mountain cat
Of
and
course, of
stabbed in the eye
course.
with a saber.
Yes, yes. Yeah, she's so on board that it kind of makes me skeptical that maybe she's in on the joke. But I just think that she's just yesing him to death because
Yeah.
she wants to get him off the phone.
I mean, haven't you ever been in like a taxi or an Uber with somebody, the driver's just saying all this weird shit about
Yes.
conspiracy theories or whatever, and you're just like
Yeah.
agreeing with everything they say? Yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Oh, you'll terrorize people with a
The
mountain
Martians did
cat.
9/11.
Okay.
To your point, I don't think she's in on the joke, but I do think, and this is something we've talked about last call, like standing a prank phone call to the end and preserving that illusion of reality is very difficult, because to keep the call funny, you have to keep making jokes, right? Or
Yeah.
keep, having bits. And Saul's Glasses obviously is a masterclass in sustaining that throughout. I do think, I love this call, it's hilarious, but I do think by the end of this call, it gets to the point where she's no longer taking it that seriously, or it's just like whatever, Either she thinks
Yeah.
he's half convinced it's a bullshit call, or it has just gotten bizarre to the point that she's not really taking it seriously anymore. I don't think it detracts from the call too much, but I do think that this call does not sustain the same level of pulling the wool over the eyes through the entire call.
The ending of this call features one of my favorite line readings, if you will, of a Jerky Boys call, and that is Carol, the night manager, responding to Tarbash saying, "Okay, my friend."
Okay, my friend.
Thank you, my friend.
Her attitude coming into the call was, I'm going to meet this guy where he is, and I'm going to be sort of culturally sensitive. Like when she's like, oh yeah, in your country, that's considered magic. Sure, right? She's not being judgmental, right?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
it's the 90s. It's
I mean, look,
be,
she's a talent booker in New York City in the 90s.
Right.
She's seen it all.
seen some shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it comes back to that, okay, my friend, at the end, that's sort of her coming back to her.
Yeah.
More the sort of enthusiastic attitude that she had for the first half of the call.
Yeah.
But it is a great delivery.
There are definitely funnier Kamal calls. There are definitely, in my taste, funnier Tarbash calls. But to me, this was formative. This was iconic. And much like the Saul Rosenberg call that we talked about last week, it really kind of establishes Tarbash as someone who, like all of these characters, lives in an absurd world where bizarre things are constantly happening to them.
Yeah.
And my favorite calls are the ones where the people buy it and are, as you were saying before, striking that balance of being bizarre and not alienating the person on the other line,
Right.
making things as crazy and weird as you can, but still grounding it enough in reality that they don't immediately hang up is the key. And I think both of these calls do it quite well. And eventually you either end it amicably or you drop a bomb. You go scorched earth and burn all your bridges. And this next call we're going to talk about was the final call on the first album. And what a way to end it. It was an early appearance of a Kamal character who is probably my favorite Kamal character by far, a guy named Kissel. Johnny B talks about how the characters are relatable, and that's part of the appeal of the Jerky Boys. But out of all of them, no one is more relatable to me than Kissel, because everybody knew a grouchy old man who had been in a war,
Right.
sat in a chair, smoked cigars, hated his wife, just like
Yell at the TV. Yeah, right.
complains about everything.
perhaps owns a small business in which he
Yes,
terrorizes his
exactly.
employees.
Yeah. So this is early Kissel.
This Kissel is a different character. It's not quite there at the sort of grouchy old man. The voice is different. The character is different. I never saw this Kissel at the time as like an old World War II codger, like the later Kissel. It kind of
Yes.
evolves into that. This guy is more just some guy from Astoria.
Yeah. There was a comment I read under the YouTube clip of this that said, I like to think of this call as Kissel the prequel. Like this
Right.
is
Yeah.
Kissel in his
As a young man.
40s, you know, not so much as a young man, but like in his
Right.
40s, not
Yeah.
an elderly codger. I think that part of the reason why Uncle Freddie was one of the calls that I laughed at the most when I was a kid listening to it over and over again is the twist that it takes. It goes from your usual tormenting a small
Yeah.
business owner
Customer
to
service call.
something much different. So this is Kissel. As he makes no.
This is Kissel.
Is it a first name? Is it a last name? We're supposed to know who you
Well,
are?
Clearly, this guy should know. He's a high priority customer. And he's got all water all over the place. I don't know why, but that is one of my favorite line deliveries in all of Jerky Boys. There's all water's all over the place.
It's the S at the end of water, you know.
Yeah,
The water
yeah.
is all.
There's waters all over
Is that
the place.
is that plural or is that a contraction?
Plural-
I'm not sure.
Plural, possessive, I don't know.
It's all water's all over the place.
The stress, the accent on place at the end of that sentence is
Yes.
exactly like how my grandparents talk. All over the place, you know.
Yeah, yes.
I can hear my grandmother saying it that way in my head, like we made a mess, you know. Oh, we got it all over the place. And
Yes.
just on that note, like we've talked about the authenticity of the place in these calls, you know. Obviously, the plumber is a real plumber from Queens or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And he sounds exactly like my grandfather on my mom's side, who's from Brooklyn, you know, close enough. I picture my grandfather, who was just this sort of no nonsense kind of guy, dealing with this insanity. And just the thought of that makes me laugh, you know.
It's not so insane right off the bat, you know.
No.
He's calling this guy. He said, I'm over there on Crescent Street, and the plumber actually recognizes the street. Maybe he had a call on the same street.
24 Crescent Street.
Oh, you're the one on Crescent Street?
Yeah, that's right.
Or did they call once and sort of set this up? I doubt it. That doesn't seem to be their MO. But
Yeah, maybe the guy has a very small service radius. He only deals with a very specific neighborhood. So the idea of two people on Crescent Street needing plumbing, I'll tell you what, I went to a party for your brother once. You were probably there, and it was at the famous beer garden in Queens.
Yes,
and
the Zeppelin Hall.
On my way from the subway to the beer garden, I passed Crescent Street. And much like when I passed 30 East 60th Street, I was filled with this sense of wonder that was really only inspired by the Jerky Boys that no one else would ever appreciate. But
I had the exact same experience. No, I had the exact same experience visiting my brother once, stumbling up Crescent Street. I think he lived on like 28th or something, which is like just 2 blocks over from Crescent Street. I'm assuming this is Astoria. I don't know if that's where Crescent Street is in Queens. And yeah, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But again, you know, these guys, they are legit New Yorkers, and it's part of why it feels so real, right?
Yes, we were saying that their knowledge of the city and its geography lends a slice of authenticity that keeps people more invested than they would otherwise be.
In the Jocko Johnson call, when he gives the address of the house, the small little house. It's black. It's 59th Street and Metropolitan Avenue. And
Yes.
then she insists on the address. Mr. Johnson, I need the address. It's like 5907. What he knows is that in Queens, the first two numbers of the address are always the street. So it's like 2928 or whatever, right? So little bits of like authenticity like that help people thinking it's real.
Yeah. For sure.
All right, anyway, back to Uncle Freddie.
So they're on pretty good terms, I guess. You're the one on Crescent Street. Okay, let's get to the bottom of this. But immediately, Freddie says, not Freddie, Kissel says, well, maybe my son called.
Oh, we can't skip the arguing about the days, though.
Oh, you said Monday.
They're on marginally friendly terms, but they do have this disagreement about. There's this. He's like, "Oh, you're the ones on Crescent Street," and Kissel feels all relieved because, like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, yeah, you remember me."
Yeah.
And the plumber's like, "I told you I'd be there Wednesday."
I told you I'd be there Wednesday.
No, you said Monday.
I said Wednesday.
Oh, now you're calling me a liar?
On the subject of like the voice that Kamal uses in this call, it's like he's half asleep, but also kind of threatening. You know what I mean? Right? This Kissel guy talks slowly in this sort of vaguely slurred speech, but there's also this kind of undercurrent of like danger here. He's like, now you're calling me a liar? You know?
Yes.
I knew it reminded me of something. There's a character on The Sopranos, Johnny Boy Soprano, who is Tony Soprano's father. His affect is almost exactly the same, of this sort of kind of lazy, dirtbag, low-level mobster.
Talk about good timing. I was just going to call you, Johnny.
Oh, yeah? Someplace we could talk in private?
Even the way he says, because Tony's name is Anthony, even the way he says Anthony.
Anthony, I told you to wait in the car.
There's something vaguely threatening about the way he carries himself in this call. And so I think the plumber is maybe a little bit on edge.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you listen to some of the stuff from the bootleg tape that came out years before this, some of the calls are downright threatening. I think a lot of it is that Kamal came up in that world, so he knows people like that. And Uncle Freddie, I keep calling him Uncle Freddie, but he's Kissel.
Kissel, yeah.
This version of Kissel, at least, is supposed to be threatening. And that's what makes the second half of this call so much crazier. So after this disagreement, Monday, Wednesday, Kissel says, maybe my son called. And at which point the guy just wants to get out of this.
Maybe my son called.
No, I don't know.
Wait, hold it for a minute.
And again, exactly something my grandfather would say when he didn't want to be bothered. Nah, I don't know. You know?
I don't know.
He can't get off this call. You know? Here comes the son. And here's where the call flips to something really special.
So let's talk about Anthony. Anthony is a character that pops up a handful of other times in the land of the Jerky Boys. Officially, according to the very poorly written Jerky Boys Wikipedia page, Anthony is voiced by Johnny B, but I don't buy it.
I don't buy it. No way. No way.
The voice is much different. The guy who does Anthony appears in the epic Flower Lady calls, which were released as part of the Jerky tapes, the last official Jerky Boys album, but I'm sure we'll get to that. But whoever he is, a lot of people collaborated with the Jerky Boys, especially before they blew up. Most notably, a guy known as John Musacha, who released his own album called the Musacha Tapes. He was one of the crew back in the day. But Anthony, I don't know who he is. We're delving the depths of the internet.
We've looked into it,
I did. I tried.
I posted a question on the Jerky Boys Facebook page, which was a big mistake. That went about as well as you'd expect. With the answers were just a stream of quotes, which were funny. I always appreciate, but didn't.
Yes,
One person on that thread said, I think it's just a young Johnny. Again, yeah, I think you're right. The fact that he's in the Flower Lady calls would seem to undercut that. I've always assumed Johnny is the wife,
Oh yeah, he's got to be.
Martha.
Martha. Well, let's
Yeah.
take it one step at a time.
Right, one step at a time.
Honestly, whoever plays Anthony, whoever is the voice of Anthony, is not only doing a fantastic job
Yeah.
as like a child or like a man child. I'm picturing him as like a 30-something-year-old man living with his parents.
Exactly. Oh no.
Oh no. And it's thanks to whoever voices Anthony that this call takes the twist that it does.
Yeah.
Because he starts off talking about the plumbing, but he immediately asks him if his name is Freddie.
Are you Freddie?
No, I'm not Freddie. My name is
Uncle Freddie.
What?
Uncle Freddie.
Uncle Fred?
Yeah.
Who?
You.
No.
Are you Freddie? And the guy's like, no, my name's not Freddie.
Ooh, you? No.
And so Anthony immediately takes that as Uncle Freddie is dead just because the plumber's name is not Freddie.
Right.
There's no Uncle Fred here, and I think you're talking to the wrong party.
Oh, no. Yeah, talk to my father.
What?
Uncle Freddie didn't die. He said Uncle Freddie died.
If whoever's voicing Anthony is the one that came up with that on the fly, then absolutely he deserves the lion's share of the credit, or at least equal with Kamal. Kamal for this call being legendary.
Yeah.
And we don't even know who it is.
Yeah, I think that is the white whale of our podcast, is
Okay.
tracking down the voice actor who played Anthony. Once we interview him, we can shut it all down.
Yes.
It takes it into a whole nother level. And we were talking before about not getting things to too extreme a point because you don't want to risk ending the call. And this call is 2.5 minutes long, which,
a long one.
as far as Jerky Boys calls go, one of the longer ones.
Like Act 3 of Hamlet by Jerky Boys.
Dan is a literature professor for the listeners at home, so that's why he drops all these urbane references.
Right, yeah.
But we were talking about how you don't want to like drop a bomb and kill the call.
Right.
And this could have killed the call. If I was a plumber and I started getting accused, are you Uncle Freddie? Yeah. So anyway, Anthony asks him if he's Freddie. He says no. He assumes Freddie is dead. And the plumber, God bless him, responds with one of my favorite lines from this call that he repeats quite often. I think you're talking to the wrong party here.
No, it's so good. It's so perfect because you know why? The wrong party is so perfect because it is a phrase. We have passed the point now where anybody's going to use that phrase.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the context of a telephone call. And so it's this perfect like generational divide. It's no screenwriter would have come up with that phrasing to like give this give this character legitimacy. I think you're talking to the wrong party. It could only be because he's actually an real old man from Queens, who probably grew up in a tenement, I think you're talking to the wrong part. And I remember my son asking me, I mentioned him before. This is obviously, like anybody, is one of his favorite calls, but him asking me, what does that mean, wrong party? Like, I don't understand that phrase. And you wouldn't, because we don't use that word party in the context of a phone call anymore. So I had to explain to him, party just means the group that you're trying to get in touch with or whatever. But yeah, I love it too. It's because it's so perfectly authentic. And he keeps repeating it like a mantra, like to ward them off. He says it like 5 times.
I mean, the thing that I like the most about these Jerky Boys calls is that you can picture the people they're talking to. Again, like we've talked about a lot, growing up in the New York, New Jersey area in the 80s and 90s, you knew these people. And like this man was a 70-year-old plumber in the early 90s, you know everything you need to know about this
Yeah,
person because
absolutely.
you knew 70-year-old men in the early 90s. They were your uncles, they were your grandpas.
Yeah.
So once Anthony establishes that Uncle
Freddie's
Freddie
dead.
Uncle Freddie is dead, Kissel gets back on the phone. He
We get one
announces
more.
that Uncle Freddie died, and you hear his wife
Ah.
scream in the background.
Martha, Uncle Freddie died. Oh, you're in trouble now.
It is a feral howl of limitless grief. They all apparently all loved Freddie so much that this is just the most mortal blow that could be struck. Find out that he's dead. She sounds like the women of Troy or whatever when Achilles kills Hector, you know? It's not big of a deal to them. I know one of the great joys of this is playing these tapes for the first time for people, at least back in the day, right? It was always so fun to hear people's reactions the first time you played it. And that sound always gets such a huge laugh from everybody.
Oh, yeah. It's not just the sudden scream. The timing is incredible, but it's the fact that this poor old plumber on the other end of the phone is now suddenly in the middle of this horrible family drama.
Yes.
And he is completely taken aback by this, but miraculously not hanging up the phone yet.
I don't know why.
It's one thing that Freddie is dead, that this all happened in a matter of seconds, and he is suddenly in the middle of it. But Kissel starts accusing him of killing Uncle Fred, which is really what takes it to.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Right, and what I mentioned before about him like this vaguely threatening presence kind of bursts into full flower here.
I'm gonna come there. I'm gonna break your fucking legs. You killed Uncle Freddie. They killed Uncle Freddie. They killed him. You motherfucker.
Because the plumber's quiet
Yeah.
while they're gnashing their teeth about Uncle Freddie being dead. Till Kissel starts telling him how he's going to come down there and break his legs. And then all of a sudden the plumber's like, "Whoa, hey, whoa.
Whoa. I love that. He's just like, whoa, hey, like, let's not get carried away here.
Hey, whoa.
You know what? I'm sure a plumber from Queens in the early 90s may have had a run-in with the local
Mafia syndicate,
legitimate businessmen. Yes. Who the hell knows Uncle Freddie? That's another line I love.
Is that him yelling to the other people in the shop? Like,
No.
Uncle Fred, like desperately
No,
trying to.
I like that idea, but no, I think he's saying, like, why would I know Uncle Freddie? Like,
Right. Yeah, probably.
and
You know what
you're
talking about.
do you know what you're talking about?
Do you know what you're talking about?
Like,
Which is a good question.
It is a legitimate question for sure. But I just love how completely exasperated this guy is by the end of the call. He doesn't know what the fuck just happened in the course of 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, and all he can say to make sense of it is, "You got the wrong party."
You got the wrong party. Yeah. So it ends with another gear shift. Kissel says,
Now you want to kill me, right? You want to kill.
Got the wrong party.
You want to kill me now.
and then and then the plumber de-escalates things.
He says right at the end of the call here, right, in the de-escalation, after this entire call, 2.5 minutes, for some reason, Kissel says, "This is." Sorry, he says, "This is Kissel."
This is Kissel.
And then at the beginning of the diffusing is when he's, "I don't know, no kiss."
I wonder if he said that because he thought like his name would mean something, like he was trying to use his name, like, you should know who I am, I'm Kissel.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, God. With the plumber de-escalating things and Kissel just saying, All right, all right, all right. And then,
The whole thing where I you of murder and threatened to come break your legs.
yes,
And then it intimated that you were going to kill me. Oh,
yeah.
all right. Maybe I was
Yeah,
wrong.
just a roller coaster. This one is.
Yeah, and clearly at that point, nowhere to take the call, right? It's just,
Yeah.
you've maxed out this call. Like I said this last time, right, with the Saul Rosenberg call, there comes a point where you got to wrap it up. And if you can do it with a little de-escalation, you got to have a smooth landing here, right? There's nowhere to go at this point. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Again, they could have nuked it several times. Anthony could have killed it, but instead he brought it to another level. It was all this poor old man.
If you listen to the bootlegs, you know this is true too. Like there must be so many calls that they make that go nowhere, that get super quickly, right? You probably have to make 50 prank phone calls to get one good one. And this is just the one where everything clicked. It is easily one of the greatest prank phone calls of all time. I feel very comfortable saying that. Just every beat's perfect. At any point where it could have gotten nuked, like you said, it just goes to another level.
Again, two absolute stone cold classics.
Do we have our segments to do though, right?
Yeah, we do. We do. The first one is the Jerktionary, in which we will be submitting words that have kind of been invented or given a new meaning by the Jerky Boys. As of now, the word jerky is the only entry. I don't think we have anything here. Again,
that's because the coinages and the neologisms and stuff, that's really more Johnny's thing than Kamal's.
Yes, we have the Jerky Boys tour of New York, which are landmarks that have been mentioned in Jerky Boys calls. Already we have 30 East 60th Street, of course, and the Observatory of the Empire State Building. I am going to, of course, submit 24 Crescent Street.
As a major thoroughfare in Astoria, as we said, if you ever get off at the Astoria Boulevard stop or whatever, you can easily find it if you want to pay homage.
You know, I fear that eventually we will have to host a Jerky Boys tour, although I think the locations are like too far apart to be convenient or fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Middletown is 60 miles.
Next, we have the Jerky Boys Hall of Fame. These are people who have been mentioned by name in Jerky Boys calls. So far, we have Barbara, of course, the receptionist at 30 East 60th Street. But I am, of course, submitting Carol, the night manager.
And her eternal patience.
Yes, I'm sure she has a very impressive LinkedIn page. Finally, I'm going to introduce another recurring segment, if you'll allow me. It's called the Injury Report, where we chronicle every injury suffered by a Jerky Boys character. Now, we had a Tarbash call, but he was not actually injured in it.
A rare thing.
Yes, he threatened to injure others, for sure. But no injuries suffered by Tarbash or Kissel. But I will submit from our last episode, Saul's eyes going crazy.
Perfect. Yes.
And God knows Saul will suffer much more as we go on.
Many more maladies to come. Both,
absolutely.
Both physical and psychological.
Oh, poor Saul. Oh my goodness. On that note, this has been our Kamal episode. We talked about the Egyptian magician and Uncle Freddy, the closing track of the first album. Thank you so much for joining us. We got such a great response after the first one. We hope you enjoy this one. And as long as Dan wants to, we'll keep going with this. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
You got me sick as a dog. You got me sick as a dog. You got me sick as a dog. I can't have that. You got me sick as a dog. You got me sick as a dog. You got me sick as a dog. All right. Yeah, is this the restaurant? I was there a little while ago with my wife, and we ate some of them fava beans.
All right.